Sunday mornings used to be sacred in our house. Not in any religious way, just quiet, slow, predictable. Mara liked to sleep in a bit, then shuffle to the kitchen in her big wool socks and an oversized t-shirt that read, "I survived wine country." We'd sit across from each other with our coffee mugs, barely speaking. Sometimes, the silence between us felt like peace. Other times, like a held breath. But that morning I was alone. She was in California. Girls' weekend, she'd said. Wine, yoga, lavender fields, the whole self-care playbook. She deserved it, I thought. Honestly, I was glad she had something for herself. I even packed her bag, down to her favorite eye mask and that little satin pouch she uses for jewelry. I was on my second cup of coffee when my phone lit up with a message in the family group chat. Mara's sister, Renee, had sent it. Just a photo, no caption. I opened it without hesitation. It was Mara seated at a wooden brunch table outside. Late morning sun, 3 mimosas on the table, and a 4th drink, something dark and frothy, sitting beside her. A cappuccino, maybe? She was mid-laugh, head tilted just slightly, one hand covering her mouth. The other hand? It was in the act of sliding her wedding ring off her finger. I don't mean it was off already. I mean the photo caught the precise moment, thumb pressed to the band, pulling it over her knuckle. You could even see the faint indentation on her skin from where the ring usually lived. Right next to the cappuccino, the ring rested like something temporarily discarded, like sunglasses or a napkin. And next to her, across the table, sat a man. Not just a man. A stranger. He had sunglasses pushed up on his head and a denim jacket open over a white t-shirt. Scruffy beard. Good-looking in that casual, I don't try too hard kind of way. He wasn't looking at the camera. He was looking at her. Directly at her, in the kind of way that makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up. I stared at the image. Then zoomed in. Then out. Then just stared. I didn't reply to the message. Didn't text Renee. Didn't call Mara. I just sat there in the kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the house. My coffee was cold before I realized I was still holding it. That night when she came home, I didn't mention the photo right away. I waited until she had unpacked, taken a shower, and thrown her hair up into that loose bun she wears when she's tired but doesn't want to admit it. We were both in the kitchen, her spooning leftover pasta into a bowl. I said it casually, or at least tried to. "Hey, your sister sent a photo from brunch. Looked nice out there." She glanced over. "Oh, that? Yeah, it was great. That place had the best views, right in the hills. I noticed you had your ring off." She didn't flinch. Didn't hesitate. "Oh," she said, shrugging. "Yeah. My fingers were a little swollen from all the wine and salty food. You know how it is." I nodded slowly. "And the guy?" She raised an eyebrow like she was surprised I even noticed. "Him? That's Tanner. He's a friend of Jen's, one of the girls I went with. Super chill, harmless. He was just kind of tagging along. Bit of a third wheel, really." She smiled as she said it. Then pivoted quickly. "I missed you though. Honestly, next time I'd love for us to do a weekend like that together." I didn't push. Didn't say what I was thinking, that I hadn't even seen Jen in the photo. Just Mara, her sister, another woman whose face I didn't recognize, and Tanner. And of all the moments someone could have captured on camera, why that one? But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I nodded again and said, "Yeah, maybe." Then we ate in silence. She scrolled her phone. I stared into my plate. Later that night, lying in bed with her back to me, I stared at the ceiling and wondered why something that could be explained so easily still felt like it fractured something inside me. Like a hairline crack that didn't break the glass but changed how it reflected light. See, the thing is, when you work in military-grade security like I do, your brain becomes hardwired to see patterns, to read silence, to spot inconsistencies. You can't afford to miss signals. You're trained to ask, what doesn't belong here? And what didn't belong was that man. And that moment. And the look on her face. It wasn't guilt. That would have been easier. What I saw was joy, unfiltered, unguarded, familiar. The way she used to laugh with me. Before. I don't mean to sound paranoid. I'm not the type to jump to conclusions. I believe in facts. But that photo didn't feel like a mistake. It felt like something that wasn't meant for me to see. A glitch in the cover story. The next morning, Mara acted like everything was fine. She made French toast, played music while she cooked, and even wore that threadbare concert tee I used to say made her look like trouble. She kissed me before heading out for errands like we were still us. But something was off. A signal in the noise. I didn't confront her. I didn't snoop. Not then. But I started paying attention. And I couldn't stop thinking about how casually she'd taken off that ring. Like it meant nothing. Like I meant nothing. Once you notice something's off, you start seeing everything differently. That Monday morning, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the empty chair across from me where Mara usually drank her coffee. She had left early for a networking hike with some of the women from her new wellness group. That was new. Hiking? She used to roll her eyes at influencers who wore yoga pants but never actually sweated. Now she was one. I don't know exactly when it all shifted. Maybe it had been gradual, quiet, creeping, like erosion. You don't notice the ground slipping until something topples. But with that photo, her ring next to the cappuccino, her hand halfway to nowhere, it was like someone lit a match in a pitch-black room. Suddenly, all the outlines I had ignored became obvious. Her phone, for instance. We used to share Spotify playlists. Not anymore. Now her screen lit up with notifications I didn't recognize, new names, new apps. She'd angled the phone away from me when she replied. Once I walked past her in the hallway and saw her swipe a message closed the second I entered the room. I didn't say anything then, but I remember the sting. Like watching a door close just before you had the chance to ask what was on the other side. Then there was her Instagram. It had always been full of us, candid *TS at baseball games, blurry selfies from the truck, that corny sunset photo she took when I carried her across that muddy trail in Sedona. But a few months ago, those photos disappeared. Not deleted, just untagged. She archived the ones with me in them and started posting landscapes, smoothies, quotes about freedom, and photos of her feet dangling off yoga mats. When I asked, she brushed it off with a smile. I'm just curating my page, she said. I want it to be more neutral. You know, professional. Neutral? Since when did she care about being neutral? I noticed the wedding photo had vanished from the hallway shelf too. When I asked, she said she was boxing them up to keep them safe. Dust protection, she claimed. But the shelves were still dusty. Just emptier. She started spending more time at late-night yoga. A studio across town I'd never heard of. One class turned into two, then into workshops. She came home flushed, energized. Sometimes she'd bring smoothies or pressed juices and I'd ask how it was. She always had the same answer, amazing. You should try it. But she never invited me. Even her scent was changing. She used to wear something soft, warm, vanilla, sandalwood, whatever the label said. Now it was sharper. Muskier. Like the perfume was trying to say something louder. I remember one night in particular. She was in her home office, laptop open, soft music playing. When I walked in to grab a charger, she slammed it shut so fast the sound actually startled me. Sorry, she said quickly. It's just this new meditation workshop I'm working on with the group. Not ready to share yet. I didn't push. Didn't ask who she was texting at 11 p.m. the night before. Didn't ask why she was sleeping with her phone under her pillow now. Didn't ask why she'd stopped calling me babe and started calling me Han in that distant, almost formal tone. Like we were polite strangers playing house. But after the brunch photo, none of it sat right anymore. I started keeping track, not obsessively but intentionally. The missed calls. The I'll be late texts. The way her smile looked more like a performance when she came through the door. Like she was stepping back into a role she didn't audition for anymore. I remembered one night, not long before the trip. We were in bed, lights off, both facing opposite walls. I reached for her hand beneath the covers, just a small thing, something I used to do without thinking. She didn't pull away. She didn't grip back either. Just let it sit there. Lifeless. Like my touch had become background noise. That's when I started wondering how long she'd been gone, even while her body was still here. And then there was the shift in language. She started saying things like, I need to find myself. Or, you know, people grow at different speeds. She said it with this practiced calm, like she'd been rehearsing it in her head before saying it out loud. Once, she told me she felt too seen by me. You're so still, Kyle, she said, like it was both a compliment and a complaint. It used to make me feel safe. Now, I don't know. Sometimes it makes me feel like I'm stuck. Stuck? We built this life together. This house, this routine, these Sunday mornings. She picked the wall colors. I laid the tile. We fought over throw pillows. Now suddenly she needed to find herself and I was the reason she couldn't? It was the kind of logic that only made sense if you were already halfway out the door. I told myself I was being paranoid. That people change. That maybe she was going through something. A rough patch. A spiritual phase. A delayed quarter-life crisis at 39. But deep down I knew. I knew. And knowing doesn't come with relief. It comes with a kind of grief that hasn't happened yet. Like you're watching a building sway in the wind and realizing it's going to fall, you just don't know when. I didn't say anything to her. I played along. I nodded at her stories about energy healing and followed her new smoothie account out of habit. I made dinner and waited to eat until she got home, even when she came through the door 2 hours later than she said she would. Because I still wanted to believe in us. Because I didn't want to be the guy who accused his wife without proof. Because, honestly, I was scared of what I might find if I started digging. But the signs were everywhere. Like cracks in a dam, fine on their own, but together? You start bracing for the flood. And somewhere deep inside me, I was already soaking wet. I didn't want to become this version of myself. The guy who stares at a locked phone screen for too long. The guy who notices changed passwords. The guy who, in the middle of brushing his teeth, suddenly wonders if his wife has a second Instagram account. I always told myself I'd never go looking unless I was ready for the answer. But the truth is that answer had already started bleeding through. It wasn't one thing. It was everything. And I needed to know. Not guess. Not suspect. No. So I did what I once thought only insecure, unstable people did. I created a fake social account. It felt ridiculous at first. I used a generic name, chose a profile pic from some old hiking subreddit, and followed a bunch of local wellness pages so it wouldn't look suspicious. Then I followed a few people Mara had recently started tagging in her captions, women from her new yoga circle mostly. And one guy. His name was Tanner. Same guy from the brunch photo. I hadn't forgotten him. Mara said he was a friend of a friend, harmless, a total third wheel. But when I found his profile, it was private. That only made me more curious. So I sent the follow request. Tanner accepted it within the hour. His main feed was polished but vague: travel *TS, bonfires, quotes about chasing sunsets, and shirtless trail selfies that screamed I journal after *X. Nothing explicitly incriminating. But the real story wasn't on the grid. It was in his stories. Specifically, the close friends list. I didn't expect to be added to it, but apparently Tanner didn't vet who he let into his little circle. Either that, or he just assumed anyone following him from the wellness community was one of them, safe, supportive, or too busy microdosing sage oil to care. That night, I lay in bed next to Mara while she scrolled through her own phone, headphones in, watching some breathwork video. I turned my screen away and tapped Tanner's green ring story. What I saw made the room feel colder. The first video was from a beach bonfire. Late at night, firelight flickering, shadows dancing across half-drunk wine glasses and bare ankles. Mara was in it, clear as day, curled on a fold-out camping chair, laughing at something off camera. Tanner was sitting next to her. Her legs were casually draped across his lap like they'd always belonged there. He was stroking her ankle. Slow, familiar. Absent-minded. You don't do that to someone you met 2 days ago. The next clip was inside a bar, dimly lit, rustic walls, candles flickering on reclaimed wood tables. Mara and Tanner again, heads leaned in, glasses clinking. She was wearing the same sweater I had helped her pack. The same sweater I bought for her last Christmas. There were no girlfriends in these videos. The third post was a still photo. Just the two of them standing in front of a vineyard fence. The caption read, "We made it to our spot, wine glass sparkles." Our spot. I tapped back to the original brunch photo, her hands slipping off the ring, his gaze fixed on her like she was telling a story he already knew the ending to. And suddenly, I saw it for what it really was, not a mistake, not a *T, but a moment. Their moment. She hadn't taken the ring off because it was tight. She'd taken it off because it didn't belong there. I stared at the phone screen for a long time. The room was silent except for Mara's soft exhale as she sank deeper into whatever guided meditation was telling her to let go of what no longer serves her. The irony wasn't lost on me. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I lay there, eyes wide, staring at the ceiling while her breath moved in rhythm beside me. Everything she had said, the shrug, the eye roll, the "he's just a friend," was now drenched in another man's fingerprints. You tell yourself you'll know when it's real. That there's a line between emotional distance and betrayal. But the truth? That line doesn't come with neon lights. It comes in whispers. And now it had screamed in full color through someone else's camera lens. In the morning, Mara acted like nothing was different. She asked if I wanted pancakes. Told me about a new moon circle happening next weekend. Even kissed me goodbye with that same gentle hand on the back of my neck she'd always used, only now it felt like the hand of someone closing a chapter, not holding on to one. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I printed the photos. All of them. I made a folder. Labeled it clearly. It wasn't out of spite. It was out of self-respect. I'd spent years being dependable, solid, the kind of man who kept quiet because love should be stable, not loud. But now I realized there's a difference between being silent and being silenced. So I packed a small duffel, just clothes, boots, and that folder, and I left. No speech, no argument. I just placed a short note on the counter, folded in half, next to her favorite mug. I drove until the cell service dropped. The cabin belonged to my father. We used to come here in the fall, split firewood, sit in silence. He always said, some truths need space before they'll talk to you. I think I finally understood what he meant. I didn't slam the door when I left. There was no fight, no broken dishes, no dramatic scene where I yelled at her to confess. That's not who I am. Maybe it's who I should have been, but after everything, I didn't have it in me to put on a show for a woman who had already changed the channel. The note I left said 3 sentences. Mara. I know. I've seen enough. I'll be gone for a while. Don't contact me. I didn't leave out of spite. I left because I needed silence louder than I needed answers. I drove 4 hours south until my signal died and the road turned to dirt. My dad's cabin sat on a forgotten edge of Arizona, just a few miles shy of the Mexico border. No neighbors. No reception. No Wi-Fi. Just the hiss of wind through the dry brush and the occasional coyote cry at night. I hadn't been there in years. The place still smelled like old pine and flannel. His coat still hung on the hook by the door. I dropped my bag on the floor, sat on the edge of the cot, and for the first time in days, I breathed without the weight of pretending. It's strange how fast your body reacts to betrayal. You think it'll come in waves: anger, grief, rage, maybe even numbness, but for me, it was all at once. Like every muscle had been holding something in, and the second I crossed that threshold, everything gave way. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at nothing, trying to process how a woman I had loved for almost a decade could lie with such ease. My phone, which I almost didn't bring, sat face down on the table. It buzzed for hours before the signal finally gave out. Messages. Missed calls. Notifications piling up in digital desperation. I didn't read a single one. Instead, I chopped firewood. I boiled coffee over a propane stove. I sat on the porch with a wool blanket across my knees and tried to remember who I had been before Mara. Somewhere in the distance, I could almost hear my father's voice. You don't heal in noise, son. You heal in silence. By the second day, the adrenaline started to wear off. The anger became less sharp, and what remained was a strange hollowness. Not sadness. Not yet. Just absence. Like I'd been living with a ghost, and now that it was gone, I didn't know what to do with all the extra air. On the third morning, I powered my phone back on long enough to check for anything urgent. The messages were still coming. The first few were what you'd expect. Hey, where are you? I'm worried. Can you at least let me know you're okay? Then came the shift. Kyle, this isn't fair. I can't fix something if you won't talk to me. You're acting like I committed a crime. Somewhere between the guilt-tripping and the blame-shifting, I saw it for what it was: not remorse. Not even panic. Just control slipping through her fingers. She couldn't reach me anymore, and that terrified her more than the fact that she'd betrayed me. There was a voicemail, too. I played it once, standing barefoot on the cabin's porch while the wind picked up over the hills. Her voice came through tired, like she'd been crying but had pulled herself together just enough to keep the upper hand. Hey, I guess you're not picking up because you're processing or whatever. I don't know what you think you saw, but Tanner's just a friend. You know how affectionate I get when I drink. And the ring? God, Kyle, it's a ring. It doesn't mean anything if you know I'm committed to you. You've always been so stoic. So hard to read. Sometimes I feel like I'm married to a wall. I needed to breathe, okay? That's all it was. Can you please just stop ghosting me and call me back? This is ridiculous. She ended the call with a sigh. Not a sob. A sigh. As if I were the problem. As if I had snapped the thread, not her. I deleted the message. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't throw the phone into the canyon even though a part of me wanted to. I just sat back down and stared out into the nothingness again. That night, the fire crackled low and quiet. I wrapped myself in an old quilt and flipped through a leather notebook I'd found in the cabin, a half-filled journal my dad kept years ago. Most of it was mundane, notes about the weather, how the trout were biting, a shopping list for nails and jerky. But one line stuck with me. He had written it on a back page, underlined twice. Sometimes silence is the loudest boundary a man can set. I couldn't stop thinking about that. Mara thought silence was punishment. She thought me leaving was an emotional tactic. That I was giving her the silent treatment, expecting her to grovel her way back into my arms. But this wasn't silence as a we*p*n. This was silence as protection. Because if I had stayed, if I had confronted her, if I had listened to her twist the truth again and again, I might have let her reel me back in. I might have accepted half an apology in place of real accountability. I might have told myself we could rebuild from scratch, ignoring that the foundation had already been cracked by other hands. Instead, I gave myself the space she never would. For days in, I stopped checking my phone altogether. By day 5, I realized I hadn't spoken out loud in nearly 48 hours. I chopped wood. I boiled potatoes. I whittled small, useless things out of pine bark just to keep my hands busy. I reread the same paragraph of an old novel so many times it lost meaning. And slowly, the noise in my head began to settle. I wasn't healed. Not even close. But I was no longer drowning. I was floating. There's something deeply quieting about realizing the worst has already happened. That everything you feared, the lies, the betrayal, the hollow glances, was real. There's no more guessing. No more hoping. Just truth. Ugly, undeniable truth. And in that, there's a kind of strange relief. I don't know what I expected to find when I returned to the world. Maybe I thought the storm would have passed. Maybe I thought Mara would have left a message that felt like closure, or even an apology that resembled something human. But that's not what I came back to. I turned my phone on the morning I left the cabin. Signal crawled back in slowly like it wasn't sure I was ready. It was hours before I checked anything. When I finally opened my inbox, there was one message that stood out, not from Mara, not from my family, not from any of our mutual friends. It was from Lexi. I hadn't heard her name in years. She used to work with Mara back when she was still doing nonprofit marketing, before she dove headfirst into her wellness phase. I barely remembered her: brown hair, quick-wit, always left early at dinner parties. Her message was short. Kyle, I know it's not my place, but I've kept quiet for too long. You deserve to know the truth. Call me when you can. I stared at that message longer than I should have. Part of me didn't want to know. I already knew, didn't I? Tanner was proof enough. The photo, the videos, the voicemail, what more did I need? But something about Lexi's tone unsettled me. Like she wasn't just breaking a silence. She was cracking open something older, something buried. So I called. She picked up on the second ring. Hi Kyle, she said. Her voice was gentle but unsteady. I didn't think you'd actually call. I don't know why I did, I admitted. Maybe because I'm still waiting for something to make sense. There was a pause. Then she exhaled like she'd been waiting for this for a long time. It wasn't just Tanner, she said. The words hit like a***er punch. What do you mean? There was someone before him, Lexi said. Someone we all suspected, but no one said anything because Mara, she's persuasive. She knows how to steer a conversation. How to make you feel like you're overreacting even when you're right. I was silent, waiting. It was Miles, she continued. Her old boss. The one from the consulting firm. I remembered him. Tall, polished, expensive smile. The kind of guy who wore fitted suits to lunch meetings and laughed a little too loudly when Mara made a joke. She used to talk about him all the time, how brilliant he was, how he taught her to see the world through a sharper lens. I thought it was professional admiration. It wasn't. It started sometime last year, Lexi said. I think around February. Late nights at the office, weekend strategy sessions, overnight retreats. She told us you were cool with it. That you trusted her. I could feel my grip tightening on the phone. She told you that? I asked. Yeah. And look, I'm not proud of staying quiet. I had my suspicions. A few of us did. But Mara was so good at creating this image. You two were the perfect couple. Stable. Private. She made it seem like anything outside of that was just temporary noise. I didn't speak. Couldn't. She left the firm last summer, around the time she started getting into yoga and all that, Lexi went on. But she and Miles, whatever they had, it was real. And it lasted longer than she let on. So Tanner wasn't the beginning, I said flatly. No, Lexi confirmed. He was just the one who got caught on camera. I thanked her. I don't remember what else I said. She offered to send me some emails, some texts, but I declined. I didn't need more *TS. The damage was already etched into my bones. After I hung up, I sat in my truck for almost an hour. It was almost funny in a bleak way. I had thought the bonfire video, the one where she rested her legs across Tanner's lap, was the defining betrayal. But now I realized that moment was just the latest scene in a much longer play. One I'd been sitting through without knowing I was the joke. I thought I'd been dealing with a single wound. But what Lexi gave me was a map of old scars I never saw forming. It reframed everything. Every late night at work. Every I just need some space. Every I'm finding myself. She hadn't lost herself. She had outgrown the version of herself who chose me, and she'd been erasing that version slowly, one lie at a time. And I'd been holding the door open for her the entire time. I wanted to feel angry. I wanted to punch the steering wheel, scream, do something. But all I felt was exhaustion. Like the truth had finally settled into me in its final form. Not a break. A betrayal measured in months. Years, maybe? I drove home with the windows down, the desert wind drying the tears I didn't even know were falling. That night, I took out the folder. The one with the photos. The timestamps. The proof. I added a note to the front. Start here. End here. And in the morning, I called a lawyer. The next morning, I walked into a law office with the kind of clarity I never thought I'd find again. I had the folder in my hand, the photos, the messages, the timeline I had quietly assembled over the past month. I slid it across the table to a divorce attorney named Castillo, a quiet man with silver in his beard and the kind of eyes that said he'd seen people lose everything and still get back up. He didn't ask for details. Just opened the folder and flipped through it like he was reading a familiar story. You've got what you need, he said plainly. Proof. Pattern. Timeline. If she contests anything, she won't get far. I nodded. We talked numbers. Property. Accounts. No kids, thankfully. The hardest part was letting someone else quantify the end of your marriage into paperwork and clauses. But it didn't matter anymore. I wasn't here to punish her. I was here to unhook myself from the wreckage and walk away with whatever hadn't been scorched. Within the week, everything was set in motion. I moved into a rental cottage about 6 hours away, right outside Taos, New Mexico. It was small, quiet, faced a lake that barely rippled even in the wind. The kind of place you could forget the rest of the world existed. I didn't tell anyone except my lawyer and my brother where I was. I didn't want visits. I didn't want sympathy. I wanted silence I didn't have to earn. I bought a dog from a shelter, a rusty-colored mutt with tired eyes and a crooked ear. I named him Rusty. Fitting. We both walked like something had been broken and reattached the wrong way. My days got simpler. Mornings started with coffee and fog on the lake. I'd whittle wood or take Rusty into the hills. Some nights I couldn't sleep, but at least I wasn't lying beside a stranger pretending everything was okay. I blocked Mara's number. I didn't read her emails. I didn't open the letter she sent with Kyle, please scribbled on the back. I put it in a drawer I didn't plan to open. The longer I stayed away, the more I realized how quiet betrayal becomes when you stop feeding it. I wasn't healing quickly, but I was healing deliberately. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't managing someone else's emotions. I was relearning my own. 3.5 weeks after I moved, she showed up. Unannounced. Uninvited. At my job. I was doing part-time security at a museum, easy hours, no pressure, no one asking about my past. One of the receptionists said, there's a woman asking for you. And when I turned the corner, there she was. Mara. No makeup. Red eyes. Hair pulled back like she hadn't slept. She was wearing the gray sweater I bought her years ago on a snowy trip to Colorado. The one she said made her feel warm when everything else felt cold. Kyle, she said, her voice cracking. I didn't respond. I just need 5 minutes, she added quickly. I swear and I'll go. I led her outside. We stood under a dull sky, the wind threatening rain. She started talking. Not just about Tanner. Or Miles. But about everything. How she'd felt bored, stifled, numb. How I was too steady. Too safe. She said she wanted something unpredictable and mistook chaos for growth. She cried. She shook. She said she missed the way I made her feel secure. I thought I wanted freedom, she whispered, but I think I just wanted to destroy something because I didn't know how to be happy. Part 7, The Final Encounter and Real Freedom, 2 halves. I let her talk. I didn't interrupt. Didn't offer comfort. Didn't give her anything she could misinterpret as an opening. When she finished, I just looked at her. And said nothing. Because sometimes silence says more than any goodbye ever could. She stood there a moment longer, waiting. Hoping for. I don't know. Closure? Forgiveness? A line she could grab hold of and pull herself back into the life she burned? But I gave her nothing. And eventually she turned and walked away. I haven't seen her since. Life moved on. Quietly. I stayed near the lake. Let the seasons shift. I met someone new, months later, a woman named June. She worked at the local cafe. She didn't ask for explanations. She didn't flinch at my quiet. She just poured 2 cups of coffee one morning and said, you can sit here as long as you want. And so I did. Mara didn't just betray me. She freed me. I spent 9 years trying to be the right man for someone who didn't know what she wanted. Now I'm learning to be that man for myself. Not louder. Not harder.